Our story begins in a village being invaded by demons. They are wreaking havoc and terrorizing the citizens. Suddenly, our protagonist appears, flying in on a dragon. He is an exorcist who has lusted for power from a very young age, believing it would make him happy and prevent anything from being taken away. He would help villages by freeing them from demons with his magic, and his dragon would devour any remains. Over time, he gained immense power, summoning the mightiest beast and becoming the greatest exorcist alive. All his students admired him, but some saw him as a threat. One fateful night, he was attacked by the royal court, who marked him as an enemy and took his students hostage, all because of his lust for power, which led him to lose everything. Even worse, they sent his favorite student to eliminate him. Realizing his whole life and craving for power only led him astray, he used a reincarnation spell to start anew and have a better life. Sometime later, someone performs a ritual revealing the protagonist has no magical abilities in this new life. He is mocked for this. Now called Seika, our protagonist reincarnated into a world with humans and demons. He lives in the prestigious Lamprogue mansion, a clan of mages with his new father and siblings. Despite having no magic, he still has spiritual power from his past life. Alone, Seika practices skills with leaves, turning them into animals. His abusive brother Glee always interrupts, taunting him for having no magic. So Seika uses the crows from his spell to defend himself, scaring off Glee. Years later, Seika, now 7 years old, still never had a birthday celebration. Being the son of his father's mistress, he was ignored by everyone. Over all these years, he learned a lot about this world. He knew that this country was almost as vast as Europe, but its civilization was more advanced, peaceful, and prosperous. In his room, he used to cut papers to make his talismans. He counted on the help of his servant Aoife, who returned the objects that his brother stole from him, which he was grateful for. However, he did not appreciate his brother Glee treating Aoife as if she were a slave, nor that he continued to mock his lack of magic. Glee, who planned to enroll in the best magic academy in the kingdom, from which several magicians from the court had graduated, told Seika that he should not worry about studying. According to him, Seika would never be admitted to the academy, and his fate would be to end up in the army. In the midst of this conversation, their father interrupted them and took Glee to help him train his magic. Seika asked to go with them, and although his father considered it an exception, he decided to allow him to accompany them. Outside the mansion, his other brother conjured a windblade spell to destroy a rock. Then it was Glee's turn, who with great confidence conjured his fireball spell and hit the rock. His father congratulated him. Glee thought that Seika would not be able to cast any spell, so he challenged him to try it with the intention of humiliating him in front of his father. His other brother told Glee to stop challenging him, but Seika accepted the challenge. In this life, he swore not to pursue power nor strengthen himself. He sincerely didn't want to reveal his spells, but he had to do it to get his older brother to stop bothering him. It's not right to let the strong take advantage of the weak. He used earth magic like matchstick fragments and combined it with his fire key to ignite it. With that, he summoned a blue fireball that completely destroyed the rock. Everyone was amazed, wondering how he could invoke such a powerful spell. His father explained that there were people who could use magic despite not being born with it. The nature of his magic changes the color of the flames. Despite his demonstration, his father denied him further magic instruction. He said that no mage without magic had ever succeeded in history. He had not planned to teach him, so he considered giving him a private tutor, like his brothers. Seika was very upset, but Glee told him not to be overconfident since he still had no magic. He realized that nothing had changed, so he continued learning about this world. He spent his time practicing with the tutor. He secretly watched his father's training sessions. His brother was always out, while Seika stayed in his library reading books to continue learning. Over time, he reached 11 years old. It was time to test his new spell. In his past life, he sealed the most powerful Ayakashis and forced them to fight on his side. He wanted to bring one of his Ayakashis to this world, but he didn't know what would happen. So his first Ayakashi will be the one that represents a lesser threat. After saying a few words, he invoked a door where the Ayakashi appeared. She pounced on him and was very glad to see him. Her name was Yuki. Now she looked younger than he remembered. Maybe it was due to the influence of this world. Anyway, he was just experimenting with her. He didn't need anything special, so he was going to send her back. Yuki didn't want to go back, so she transformed into her true form and hid in his hair. He told her to call him by his new name, Seika, and was surprised that she recognized him despite no longer being the person she remembered. Sometime later, his maid bumped into Glee and soaked all his clothes. He was very annoyed by her clumsiness, but he could forgive her if she received a punishment. He told her to visit him at night. He was going to teach her to behave like a slave. Seika observed the situation and interrupted their conversation. He mentioned that he should hurry up with his discussion, as he had pending matters with Aoife. Glee was annoyed that Seika spoke to him in that tone. He wanted to hit him, but Seika easily blocked his punch. He was not as weak as before, and the other decided to leave. Aoife thanked Seika for his help and asked if she could join him. Outside, they came across a badly injured animal, likely attacked by crows. She pleaded for his help to save it. Seika was going to try, but he didn't want Aoife to watch. She turned away, and with his exorcist incantations and talisman, he managed to heal the creature. Aoife was impressed and wondered if he knew healing magic, but Seika kept his skills secret. Despite being born without magic, Aoife thought he was an incredible person, to which Seika responded that she was special too, often observing things others did not. Aoife denied knowing what he was talking about. He mentioned that he had seen her seemingly chasing spirits with her eyes multiple times. She could also see spirits, but she was looking at something more. Upon this observation, Aoife revealed her secret. What she could actually see were elementals. Thanks to these, she was able to find the garment that Seika had lost. Elementals loved to gather where there was a lot of mana, but Seika's things had something special about them. For some reason, they were drawn to his possessions, but they never approached him directly. It was as if they were avoiding him. Seika asked what was happening. Aoife mentioned that only once did those elementals listen to her to help her retrieve her clothes. It was as if they had followed her orders. In his past life, there were monsters that did something similar. He tried to investigate them too, but never succeeded because he was human. He always wanted to meet someone with that talent, and it seemed he had finally found her. In that case, he offered to teach her magic. He told her she didn't need to use her mana. He summoned a fire spirit for practice and told Aoife to extinguish it herself. She tried asking, pleading, and finally shouting for it to disappear. With that, the flame went out. Seika saw her talent. With training, she could become a powerful ally. From that day onward, they agreed to practice together every day outside the mansion for almost a year. Now, Seika was 12 years old and watched as they continued to celebrate his birthday without a feast or gifts. Even his father hadn't come. His childhood had always been like this, although it really didn't matter to him. At that moment, his brothers came to call him for training. Seika knew that being an illegitimate son, he would never be an heir. Also, he didn't have enough mana to study magic, so he had to train forcefully. His two brothers arrived and wanted to teach him fencing. Glee mocked that Seika would only be a soldier and wouldn't get any further, but Ruft wanted to help him and scolded Glee for being so rude. This brother was kinder than the other. Suddenly, a frightened maid came to warn them that a huge monster had appeared in the city. His father had attacked it with fire, causing the monster to get scared and flee to the forest. If it circled the mountain, it would end up destroying their mansion. Seika felt the monster approaching. They opened the window to check, and indeed, the monster was already there. Glee ran away in fear. Ruft ordered them to close the windows and hide in the mansion, while Seika, as a good mage, went to confront it. The monster was in front of Aoife, who was paralyzed at the sight of it. Seika had to hurry, but they were too close. He was about to use his powers, but at that moment, Aoife blocked the monster's charge. Seika wondered what had happened. Elementals have no will of their own, so it was surely Aoife who somehow used her own powers. He was very surprised. Now he had to take care of the monster, so he drew its attention to take it to a safe place. He jumped into the air, and everyone thought it would be his end. In the air, he combined 3 elements to cast a poisonous spell on the monster. This paralyzed it, and it fell to the ground defeated. He mentioned that he had used a special venom effective against that Triton. Aoife was very surprised, as was her other brother. Everyone witnessed how he defeated the monster with a single attack. They praised him for his tremendous strength. Seika finally felt appreciated, just as he expected, for in this life he wanted to be a happy person. To celebrate his victory, they prepared a feast for him for the first time. His father acknowledged his feat, which would have been difficult even for an experienced adventurer. His father wished to reward him, so Seika asked for permission to enroll in the prestigious Magic Academy. Although his father was somewhat hesitant, he accepted his request upon recognizing that Seika had shown interest in magic in the past. He only clarified that he would need to prepare to pass the entrance exam. Seika also asked that Aoife accompany him as a maidservant. She was capable of controlling elementals, so she would make a good companion. However, his father did not believe in Aoife's magical talent, so they would both have to prove him wrong. They stood before everyone, and Seika took her hand to invoke a spell. Aoife was somewhat doubtful, but she would follow his orders to be able to accompany him. She called on the elementals to surround her, and with her magic wand invoked a giant fireball. This was an intermediate-level spell. At that moment, Glee interrupted their conversation. His family had never allowed them to be seen together. Glee and his brothers were following the same course of study, and he did not want a failure and a slave girl by his side. He had to be the only one to learn magic. His father clarified that he was not breaking their traditions, since he planned to enlist Glee in the army. In recent years, Glee had surrounded himself with bad influences and never cared to improve his magic, so the army was his best option. Upset, Glee challenged Seika to a one-on-one duel. The winner would attend the academy, and the loser would go home. To avoid staining his honor, Seika readily accepted the challenge. They would face off the next day, following the rules of the Empire. Swords and intermediate-level spells were prohibited for being too dangerous, and their father would be the judge. Just then, Ruft visited his room. He knew it was late, but wanted to congratulate him on his birthday, and gave him a crystal quill as a gift. He had noticed that his wooden quills broke easily, so this one would not give him problems. He apologized for not having treated him better. Although he never knew how to talk to him, he felt proud of how much he had matured. He only asked that he control himself in the duel the next day, trusting that Glee would learn his lesson. Seika agreed and wished his brother success. Later, as he observed his new quill, he realized it was of high quality. Suddenly, his brother Glee knocked on his window and called on him to fight right now. He did not want to wait until the next day. He claimed that Seika had only gotten lucky in defeating that monster and convincing their father to study at the academy. Forget about all the rules. They will fight until one of them faints. He started by throwing an intermediate fire spell at him. He was confident that this would hurt him, but Seika emerged and retaliated with his own attack. He then hurled a wind lance at him. That's when he shielded himself by invoking a large magical barrier, blocking all his brother's attacks. It was high time to teach him a lesson. He recited his exorcist chants to paralyze Glee's body. With the talisman, Seika inflicted damage to Glee, not enough to hurt him, but only to make him surrender. Left with few options, Glee decided to withdraw from the duel and surrender to him. He held back his power because he had also promised Ruft he would. Glee claimed it was just luck, but in reality, he knew Seika had planned everything. It turned out that 6 months ago, he had summoned one of his Ayakashi to this world. It was a gigantic monster with a single eye named Bonzo. He ordered Bonzo to disturb the nest of the ancestral Triton. Thankfully, no one was hurt and everything went according to plan. He knew that in this world he could defeat all the weak humans, but this time he desired a peaceful life, so he would never fail again. Months later, the day to depart arrived and his brother Ruft came to bid him farewell. Elsewhere, his father marveled that it had already been 12 years since he first held Seika in his arms. It was then revealed that Seika was the son of his brother Gilbert. Gilbert was an unusual man, always wanting to explore the world, and he vanished in demon territory after graduation. It seemed strange to him that Seika had been born with unusual black hair and eyes in their country. He began using magic at just 1 year old and did not get along well with his siblings. This led him to think that his brother might have had a child with a demon. However, Seika had no mana, hinting that this child held something special. For these reasons, he did not send him to the army. Depending on his environment, he could either become a great hero or a destructive demon. His brother had mentioned that the academy was a good place, so he could only hope that he was right. A bit later, our heroes get to the city. Seika is beat from the carriage ride and can't hide it. He's now officially Aoife's boss, and she hints he should drop by her room at night. But Seika gets it all wrong, thinking it's about having dinner. Cool with that, Aoife heads out to grab some food. While she's gone, Yuki shows up, all annoyed about the situation. She gives Seika a hard time for not taking advantage of Aoife being a slave to spend the night together. He doesn't see it that way and doesn't really care about understanding women. Later, they take their test. Everyone is surprised seeing Seika, a Lamprogue, and wonder why he's with a slave. They need to put their hand on this mana meter in the test. It lights up white if it matches the 4 main elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. The rarer ones are light and darkness. Aoife puts her hand on it, and it shows she's got a thing for fire and wind. Then it's Seika's turn, but the orb doesn't light up, showing he's got no mana. Just then, a girl named Amy cuts in, all impatient to get registered. When she puts her hand on the meter, it turns out she's got all 4 elements. The others wonder who the heck she is. Seika thanks Amy, but she says she didn't do it for him. She was just fed up with waiting. She tells Seika she doesn't like him around, and this isn't a place for someone with no mana. She figures he'll get in using family connections and asks him not to be a pain. Right then, Seika realizes Amy looks a lot like his old disciple, and he decides to find out who she really is. Days later, they take their entrance exam. Seika is chilled about the written exam, while Aoife is worried about some mistakes she made. She didn't get enough time to prepare and feels she has to do better on the hands-on exam. In this test, they need to score points by blasting magic at targets. Seika sees the students pick just one element and not do so hot, while Aoife shows her fire, and wind magic is way better than the rest. She's been practicing on the down low, which moves Seika so much he starts tearing up. When it's his turn, despite having no mana, Seika blows everyone away by throwing a blue fireball. He busts up a granite target by calling up some gold metal, thanks to his science smarts. When asked about the spell, Seika just shrugs it off. He freezes the last target with an ice spell, leaving everyone dumbfounded by his magic skills. Despite his show, a teacher later spills that Amy is stronger than both Seika and Aoife, since she can smash the targets with all 4 elements. Another teacher thinks Amy could be the legendary heroine, someone born in human lands when the Demon King is about to make a comeback. At the end, they check the exam grades. Seika is in 3rd, Aoife in 2nd, and Amy in 1st. Seika gets a bit jealous that Aoife did better than him. With their passing grades, they're invited to the Academy's welcome ceremony, although Aoife is embarrassed by the super short outfits they're given. Before they stepped in, they noticed a dark elemental guiding them to this magic circle. It seemed too weird that it was there, but for now they had to brush it off. Seika left one of his talismans there, just in case. Midway through the ceremony, Amy gave a speech to introduce the new students. She said she wanted to get stronger to protect her friends. As she was talking, Seika heard the magic circle kick into action, and a bunch of small demons burst in and disrupted everything. No one could touch them with their spells. Amy was the only one who could protect them. Seika saw that these monsters were moving really slow. It was strange how they were moving, but he had to focus on tracking down who summoned them. He told Aoife to take off with her magic if things got dicey, and he teleported out real fast. Outside the academy, he found the dude responsible for the whole mess. His name was Ghoul Gallius, a metal demon who controlled fire and earth. He gave Seika some trouble because he could detect his invisible talismans. He even managed to cut off Seika's right arm. The demon told him he was just looking for the heroine. Everyone thinks she's just a legend, but the prophecy from 12 years ago was real. She's a woman with red hair and inhuman power. He had to take her out before she got stronger. That's when Seika realized he was after Amy. The demon was in a rush, so he went up to Seika and wounded him. He thought that was the end of it, but Seika is so powerful that with his exorcist words, he managed to revive in an instant. Don't ask me how he did it, he just did. Look, to him, trying to be the strongest seems like a waste of time. No one strong would ever win if the whole world is against you. He was the strongest man in the past, and for that same reason they saw him as a threat and betrayed him. Strength isn't everything. You can also learn stuff about science. It was necessary for him to defeat it, so he summoned one of his special ayakashis, his eastern dragon Misushi, and eliminated it with a single bite. This dragon was so fast that it almost escaped him. He did not yet fully master the spiritual power of this entity. After the battle, he returned to his companions and found that Amy had finished off all the demons. Despite having rescued them, the students no longer waited for him. They feared him a little. Seika understood that the most prudent thing was to serve and remain in the shadows, to avoid future problems. His new mission was to get close to Amy and help her become stronger. In this way, the attention would not fall on him, and he could live peacefully. However, a month later he began to realize that his plan would not be so easy to carry out. Amy, the redhead, was not exactly friendly, and he did not know how to deal with her. One of the strangest incidents that happened to him was that he was about to be sprayed with a green liquid. His teacher apologized for the accident and explained that it was part of his experiment. Seika knew that his teacher also practiced light magic, so it seemed strange to him that a human could handle both elements. Subsequently, they attended their classes. To commemorate the anniversary of the school, the teacher needed the help of Aoife and Amy. They had to deliver the list of new students by crossing the forest, a place where Seika had fought a demon. He foresaw problems, so he convinced Aoife to reject the task, which he assumed. She agreed to be able to support him. She knew that he wanted to help Amy socialize better. This made her feel a little jealous, because Amy was a pretty and very strong girl. Aoife wanted to show him that she could also become stronger. Seika replied that he did not understand the meaning of being praised and feared for your strength. He did not want her to have the same fate as him. So the next day, he and Amy started on their mission. He was really hoping they could just chat chill, but Amy, well, she liked to talk about rougher stuff. Amy got it into her head that he was tired of bossing his servant Aoife around, and now he was out for some fun with her. Out of nowhere, Amy got this really bad headache, and they stumbled on this magic circle thing that sent them straight to a dungeon. There, they had to fend off a bunch of baddies. They'd walked into a trap, and they had to find the way out fast. Dungeons are pretty much death traps, so they were in real hot water. Amy started to get weak, so Seika summoned this massive centipede to wipe out the rest of the monsters. When Amy woke up, Seika used some kind of protection magic to get rid of her headache. He told her she might have a curse mark hidden somewhere on her body, and asked if he could check her back. She was a bit embarrassed, but couldn't find anything visible. Probably the mark was really small, or the curse came from a long way off. To lift the curse, all Seika needed was one of Amy's hairs and his talisman. While they were sorting that out, Seika got to hear more about Amy's backstory. Turns out she's always been into fighting, even as a kid. She didn't fear getting hurt or even dying. She didn't seem to have those fears at all. She once went on this dangerous mission where half of the people didn't make it, but she just wanted to do it all over again. Most folks gave her the side eye for that, labeling her a battle junkie. Amy, though, she wanted to be so strong that fighting got boring. She wanted to be normal, I guess, but nothing seemed to work. In fact, during her last fight, she enjoyed it more than ever. She reckoned that made her kind of weird. Seika reassured Amy that it wasn't strange, she just hadn't found the right environment for herself yet. Amy was born to live in a world of conflict, so she shouldn't worry. Grateful for their conversation, Amy decided it was time to move on and enjoy her adventure. They discovered that to get out of the dungeon they were in, they had to defeat the boss, who was very strong, but he didn't give them too much trouble. They combined their powers to become an amazing duo, mixed their spells, and managed to defeat him. Amy thanked Seika for teaming up with her. She had never defeated a dungeon boss before. They also got a sword and a magic ring as rewards. They promised to go on another adventure together someday and left the dungeon unharmed. Seika decided to inform the professors about Amy's curse. They had no idea there was a dungeon under the temple. Although the magic circle had disappeared and they couldn't find the culprit, Seika already knew who was responsible. The culprit was her own professor, who had invoked the curse. It was impossible for a demon to infiltrate the school and create such a large magic circle. Furthermore, the dungeon could only be the work of someone from the academy. The professor was shocked to discover Seika had deduced the truth, since he had left no traces. He revealed that he was a human spy in service of the demons. His plan was to eliminate the heroine so she would not interfere with the Demon King's schemes. He intended to end her life through a remote curse, so everyone would believe she died of illness and praise him for having eliminated the heroine. However, at that moment, Seika clarified that Amy was no longer the target of his curse, but rather now his talisman was cursed. Seika had already uncovered the professor's entire plan. Then he invoked the lesser demon he had previously sealed, casting a curse upon himself. He knew that curses could be transferred, and so he returned it to the professor. The professor had meddled with the wrong person. To his misfortune, Seika was an exorcist, and his specialty was curses. Next, he explained to Yuki how he recognized their professor. His shikigamis had shown him that there was pollen from a flower on the professor's body, a flower that only bloomed near that specific magic circle. He then gave his ring to Aoife. Amy, on the other hand, didn't want to talk to him, and the two girls, Aoife and Amy, became closer by beginning to study together. A year later, we find them at their school ceremony enjoying a meal. Surprisingly, no further incidents had occurred, which was almost disappointing. Everything changed when the vice principal summoned Seika and Aoife to her office. Instead of discussing regular school affairs, she brought up the topic of the combat tournament. The school was required to send 2 representatives. One of the spots was already taken by the mysterious Mabel Crane. The other spot was yet to be filled, and they had to decide among themselves who would take up the role. Seika was almost considering going, especially to get to know Mabel. What was strange, however, was that they did not choose Amy. The principal expressed her confidence in them, believing they were the best options. Regardless, Amy had no plans of participating, but she was bothered that they didn't even consider her. She thought Mabel was recommended and given an easy pass, doubting she had experienced any hardships.